Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Harley Quinn Season 5, Episode 2. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we immediately start with Harley and Ivy have their own little place. It looks great. And just when they're about to get down to business, they immediately get cock-blocked. I couldn't find the word, sorry. They immediately get cock-blocked by King Shark, who shows up and interrupting their sexy time to dump off his 8 kids, because he's like, yo, these are kind of your god kids. So it was like, that's the most effed up thing, because he's like, yeah, I'm here in Metropolis. And he's like, oh, I kind of got a date and stuff. I'm like, wait, aren't you married? That's why I was kind of confused. Like, wait, did his wife die last season or something? I can't remember. I thought his wife was still alive. Or maybe they just got divorced. Or maybe that's something that happened in between seasons and they got divorced. I was like, weren't you married to don't you have the mother of your children? Like, isn't she your wife or is she just your baby mama? I actually don't remember. He made it sound like he had a date, but it's like they're living in Metropolis now and making a life for themselves. And now they get stuck babysitting. Well, not they, because Ivy immediately bounces and Harley's stuck on godmother duty. And it's like, oh, don't let the kids eat peanuts because they're allergic. And she's like, I'm going to feed them a whole bunch of peanuts. And King Shark is like, you will not, Auntie Harley, which is so sweet having her play the role of an aunt. So that's interesting. And let's stay on Harley's side of things, where she has to deal with these rambunctious kids who are tearing the place apart. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to try and lock you guys in a closet by tossing this thing in here. And what was it? She said it was something. And they're like, no, this isn't that. This is a coaster with 2 old ladies on it. And the coaster she had custom made with her and Ivy's face on it, which is kind of cute, like a custom couples coaster. But, they get brought to this party that's going on by Lena. And, Harley's hoping that, like, well, calm the kids down, give them something to do. And lo and behold, it didn't even register in my head when we see, like, oh, it's Goldilocks' birthday party. It didn't even register in my head until Bane showed up. I was like, right, I completely forgot. Which also answered a question I had last episode, because I was like, well, because of the Brainiac of it all, I was like, well, that's how season 1 of Kite Man Hell Yeah ended. So I was like, is this continuing this? And it's like, yes, because we have Bane, Betty, and Goldilocks. So I'm like, hell yeah, dude, I'm all about that. Because I talked about this during Kite Man Hell Yeah, like because in spoilers if you haven't seen Kite Man Hell Yeah, Bane was so busy trying to get with Golden Glider's mom, even though she's not that great of a person and she didn't love him. It was a very one-sided love. Even though, like, Betty pops up and she's obviously super into him. It was obvious during the Valentine's special that took place in between season 3 and 4. But yeah, and because someone else had commented on that too, like, oh, like, is nothing going to happen to that? And I was concerned nothing would, but seeing them together, the fact is they've adopted, Goldilocks is like, well, to be fair, it's like it made it a little easier. The fact that she doesn't technically exist, so they were able to just adopt her, and that made it easier with the paperwork. My biggest concern was when the Queen of Fables got her powers back, that she would undo that. But no, Goldilocks is still here and being taken care of, and Bane's got a family for himself. I was like, that's really adorable. I love that for Bane and Betty. That's super cute. But the place is run by a guy named Vincent Edge, and when I heard the name Edge, I was like, as in like Morgan Edge. Having Googled it really quickly, in the comics, he's apparently Morgan Edge's dad. And he's in the criminal world too, because he was connected to Inner Gang. But from what I read just really quickly, it was like, oh, he died from a heart attack. So I don't think he's a prominent character from the comics or not. So I don't know if his appearance here is just to set up Morgan Edge, because my only connection to Morgan Edge or reference to Morgan Edge is Superman and Lois. But I do know, like, Morgan Edge's situation in that is vastly different from what it is in the comics. No spoilers if you've never seen Superman and Lois, but I mean, it's like halfway through a little more than halfway through season 1 of a reveal, so it's not, I don't think it's that big of a deal, but nevertheless, I won't talk about it. But I thought that was fascinating. Because at first I was thinking, like, oh, like, was his name changed to Morgan Edge in Superman and Lois, and the character's name originally is Vincent? It's like, no, Vincent's just his dad. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. But nevertheless, Harley, being who she is kind of like, hey, I want to be accepted into a group that won't accept me. So she wants to kind of prove herself to Vincent, but she also has to deal with the whole babysitting thing. The one she interacts with the most is Sean, who is the one that's just constantly biting stuff because he's like, oh, I can't control myself. Oh, here I am biting Goldilocks' dress, even though for her it's like, which that's the most nerve-wracking thing, because like her whole thing of like, this is just right, and just for that to kind of immediately be undone by like Sean eating the dress, and just like Harley having to deal with him, and she's stressing out about it. She's just like, I'm gonna like shove my bat up your blowhole, and he breaks down because he's like, I don't have a blowhole, and he leaves, and she has to follow him. So I thought when Harley introduced herself to Vincent, she was like, yo, like, the fact of the matter is, do you have massages here? You should. She's like, I kind of like hurt my back every time I'm beating up people all the time. So I felt like her attitude, like, I felt like the initial thing was going to make it seem like he wanted nothing to do with Harley, but I thought because of just her personality and everything, he'd actually be like, actually, you're perfect for our club. No, turns out he really was against her in general, so... Especially when her little youngins are around causing havoc, ripping people's arms off like Princess Pippa. And it's like, where the fuck is... what was she? She's like, where the fuck is the real Princess Pippa? And then Sean be like, yeah, where the fuck is the real Princess Pippa? But it's like, oh, her arm got bitten off. And Bane is like, oh yeah, like, I understand. To be fair, in his defense, she called him a shrimp. And he's like, the last time someone called me a shrimp, I broke their back. And I was like... Is he referencing Bruce? Did Batman call you a shrimp, or you just talking about someone in general? Like, I mean, we have no idea how many times Bane's out here breaking people's back. The most famous one is Batman, but who knows who else's backs he's broken. So, like I said, I don't know if that was like a nod to Bruce getting his back broken in his continuity because I forgot he did get his back broken in this continuity, but it wasn't Bane related. It was something else entirely. Because that's when Alfred kind of popped up as his superhero persona. I forgot what his name was. Was it a byproduct of the aftermath of season 1's finale that left Bruce in the situation he was, or was it something else entirely? I can't remember. But either way, but Animal Control shows up, and Harley has to defend her god kids and start beating up Animal Patrol with her pool noodle. So that was interesting. And at the same time, because I'm going to connect everything at the end, we have Ivy showing up at this school, and Lena wants to introduce her to this other scientist. And at first I was like, who is it going to be? And then I was like, my immediate thought, funny enough, was Swamp Thing. Even though, yes, like, he's very hippie-ish in this, but I think he's still a scientist. I don't know. Maybe I don't know if that's always Alex's storyline in the comics or not, whether he is a scientist. I think he is a botanist and stuff like that, but maybe I'm mistaken. And I was like, and then we introduced to Jason Woodrow, which I was like, why does that name sound familiar? I was like, wasn't he in Swamp Thing? And I looked it up. Yes, it's the character I was thinking. I was like, I knew the name Woodrow sounded so familiar, but yeah, I'm specifically referencing the 2019 DC Universe show, which is kind of interesting too, considering like this is the only DC Universe show still around, even though obviously DC Universe sadly RIP years ago, but still, like, that included Harley Quinn, Titans, Doom Patrol, Stargirl, and Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing sadly only got one season, not even a full season, but that was just because production issues. There was the whole thing behind that. Titans, Doom Patrol, and Stargirl all got canceled / ended. So this is the only DC Universe show left standing, kind of interestingly enough. But yeah, just because I looked it up, because I didn't remember this. The character was played by Kevin Durand. But I was like, oh man, I didn't remember you played him. But either way, story, funny enough, ends exactly like Swamp Thing does, so I think it kind of plays into the comics in that regard too. But either way, I was wondering what Poison Ivy's situation was with this guy, because the moment she was around him, she got nervous. She even's like, yeah, once I kind of get like more anxiety induced, like my powers have a tendency to kind of run rampant. I thought it was kind of insensitive on Lena's part, being like, I don't care what your history was, because I was like, what is her situation? I was like, is it, because I was like, it can't just be an ex-lover's thing, because I mean, she was around Catwoman, and they kind of had their little tryst where she was like super into Catwoman, but Catwoman constantly like played her. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, you're kind of my hookup thing. We just kind of had a very like sexually beneficial situation, even though like Ivy was super into Catwoman. But it's like I didn't know like what like even then like she never acted like she was such a big fan of Catwoman, but we also know like there was more to it. But I was like she never had these interactions with Catwoman, so I'm like, what did their situation? I thought it was like I figured he did something very duplicitous for her to feel that way. And the fact is, we even get Ivy's origin story, which I was like, I actually don't know Ivy's origin story at all. Like most iterations of like anything Batman related, she's typically already been she's either already Ivy, at the very least she's already been Ivy for a while, or at the very least sometimes she can be Ivy for a long period of time. Like the most recent iteration of the character was in the show Batwoman. She was in season 3. She had been like obviously because that's pretty deep into Batman's Batman continuity, so a lot of his rogues gallery like already happened or already exist. Either they're still alive or they're gone, and she happened to be the one that was still around. She had her complicated circumstances that removed her from the board for like a decade or something, maybe, without really getting into it. But yeah, just like that's the most recent iteration, like I said, and that when she was already, and they touched on her past a little bit. They never showed you anything, but they talked about it. So this is like, and I don't even remember which Batman movie it was with Uma Thurman. I don't remember if that was like Forever or if that was Batman and Robin. I think it was the one with Jim Carrey as the Riddler and Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face. It might have been that one, or it might have been the one with Bane and Arnold as Mr. Freeze. I think it was the Two-Face and Riddler one, but I can't remember. I haven't seen that movie in so long. That probably covered some of her backstory, but once again, I don't know if that's continuous to like the comics or not. And also the character's been around a while, so it could easily have her continuity might have changed over the years to small degrees, maybe to a lot of degrees. I'm sure it varies from run to run. But either way, I wasn't well versed in her backstory, so getting it in this regard, I was like, interesting. And I'm curious if this plays it, because I mean, this is pretty accurate, I think, for the most part to like. It keeps pretty comic accuracy if I remember correctly. They probably do change a lot just for the sake of like doing its own thing for this story, but they keep true to like, yo, if someone pops up in this, they're most likely a character from the comics for the most part. So maybe not everything is going to be like exact as it is in the comics, but still. But yeah, we learned like, yeah, she was a young student of Jason's, and it seemed to be that professor and student relationship. We got to keep it on the low, which I'm like, yeah, you knew you were in the wrong because you're like, you would have gotten fired. That tells you like, yeah, you shouldn't be dating your students. That's a big no-no. But yeah, he's worried about like, I'm going to lose my tenure and stuff like that. Like I'm on thin ice with this group, with everyone here. So like I'm losing funding for my projects and stuff. And then Ivy showed him something she was working on and ended up being Frank, which is actually kind of sweet knowing like how far back Ivy and Frank go. She might have talked about that in the past, but I never knew like, like even before she became Poison Ivy, like she created Frank. I was like, that's really interesting. That actually ultimately leads to her becoming Poison Ivy, funny enough. But then Jason shows his real colors when Ivy shows him Frank. And it's like, yeah, he's part plant, part human. And she's, but then all Jason can see is, oh my God, this will make me a billionaire. He went super villain in that moment. And he's like, oh, hell yeah. Like, and he wants to take Ivy's work, Pamela's work, sorry, and make it his own. It's like, you'll be compensated. But she's like, no, this is my work. I want to get compensated for it. Like, if you're going to use it, at least tell people, let them know it's my work. He's like, who are they going to believe? You or me? And then what did he do? He proceeded to try and kill her. That's sucky. Like, and he had such a mild reaction when like Ivy was like, oh no, we're kind of putting the past in the past. It's like, really? You knew what you did. You tried to murder her. You're trying to be like, we're Gucci. We're good. It's like, nah, homie, we ain't good. I knew he wronged her. I did not expect it to be like, like I try to steal your life's work and murder you in the process. That's super fucked. Because I thought like, you survived what he did to you and it made you Poison Ivy. It's like, well, he tried to kill you and the same serum you used to make Frank made you into Poison Ivy. You did it to save yourself. I was like, that's super tragic. I was like, that's really sad. And so when she gets the opportunity, she's getting revenge against Jason. And he's like, I'm sorry. I even loved some bits of it where he was just like, she's like, okay. He's like, okay, to which part? That you forgive me? And she's like, okay, I'll work. He's like, okay, good. And she's like, maybe you'll survive like I did too. And she's like, smell that. Smells like cyanide and sweet, sweet revenge. I was like, wow, Ivy's brutally murdering him. But to be fair, we've already seen Ivy brutally murdered quite a few people, be responsible for quite a few deaths and stuff. I mean, they're not really in their hero bag right now. They're just living their lives. You know, she's not with the Legion of Doom anymore. Harley's not with the Bat Family because the Bat Family technically doesn't exist anymore. So it's like that. Everything's all scattered around. So it's just more of a situation of, yeah, we're just doing our own thing. We're towing the line of, we do what we want to. We're not just going to get so held up on the minutia of the black and white of hero versus villain. It's like, we're just doing our thing. Call us villains, call us this. Because that's also a thing for Ivy too, where it's like, she's like, I try to tell people like the truth, because she's like, people like try to act like I wasn't smart. They try to frame it like, oh, I made a mistake with my experiment and that's what happened to me. Which I'm wondering, is that supposed to be a wink and nod to her origins in the comics? Like, is that what actually happened? Like, it was an accident on her behalf that created her becoming Ivy. But it's like, in this case, it's like, no, that my lover tried to like kill me and steal my life's work and make it his own, so I made myself into what I am. And she tried to explain it to people, but no one believed her. So I was like, wow. And she kind of murdered him and kind of walked away. It's interesting because like Lena was super behind this, being like, yo, you need to put that behind you. But I'm like, you murdered a guy and walked away. To be fair, I think Lena was so busy at the party situation, which tying that all together, Ivy shows up, meets up with Harley, and then Lena's like, cool, I want you guys to be a part of like that whole situation. Which I'm like, what is Lena trying to do? There's the whole thing they brought up in episode 1, which is also true to her even in Supergirl, was like, she's trying to distinguish herself from her brother, where it's like, yo, Lex is Lex, I'm me, I'm not the evil Luthor that my brother is. He is a complete and utter douchebag as we come to know him over the course of the show, both this series and Kite Man, hell yeah, considering it's on the same continuity. But I'm wondering, is Lena going to be like the big bad of this season, or is it just going to be a thing of, no, I'm actually pretty chill? I don't know. Like how, like she gets what she wants very much like Lex, you know, and she can be an asshole about it. Just like, especially like her forcing Ivy's hand, not knowing the situation, it being what it is. So, which Ivy doesn't explain that to Harley. She said, some school stuff happened. It's not really worth knowing. And also, when King Shark came to pick up his kids, he left one behind, Sean, of course. So I wonder, are they going to play Mama Rose this season? That'd be really adorable, seeing them be like, because it makes you, I don't know if they've really had that question, they brought that up yet so far for them, of whether or not either one of them wants kids or not. Because Ivy was like, oh, you'll miss him the moment King Shark realizes he left one of his kids behind to come pick him back up. But we'll see. Maybe Sean won't be, but maybe that'll be part of Ivy and Harley's arc, is the whole element of, oh, do they want kids or not, you know? But then we have our teaser at the end with Jason Woodrue coming back as Floronic Man. Apparently, I've never known this character's name, but the reason I was bringing it up, and I think I talked about it earlier, it's basically how the Swamp Thing TV show ended with that, respectively. If I remember correct, I do believe he does become, someone does, but I'm pretty sure it is Woodrue who becomes a character at the very end too. So that's like how just funny how that happens, where it's like that's literally like the last scene of the Swamp Thing TV show was basically that set up. So I was like, I think it might have even been a post-credit scene if I remember correctly. So it is the irony behind it, where Jason created Pamela into the villain that she is. I mean, who knows what route she would have gone down before becoming, when she was just Pamela Isley versus becoming Poison Ivy. She even made that point across. He was like, Pamela, she's like, I'm not Pamela, I'm Poison Ivy. So ironically, he made her into what she is, and now she's going to make him into what he is and what he's going to become. So that's going to be interesting. I am curious, will we get another appearance from Swamp Thing? Was it season 3? Yeah, I believe it was season 3. I don't think it was 4. I think it was, season 3 he made his appearance. I think wasn't that also the same episode Constantine was in? Voiced by Matt Ryan, or was it at a different episode? I can't remember. So I'm curious to see where that storyline goes and how long Ivy's going to keep that to herself. Because she should open up to Harley. You know, it adds a little extra context to a lot of like, because Ivy's the one that always tried to keep it straight with Harley about like, yo, the toxic relationship she was in with Joker. Now it adds perspective on her of like retroactively like, oh, that's why Ivy had that perspective. She literally had to go through the same thing with like a dude you thought loved you, but he was actually a piece of shit. She went through the exact same thing. So it's like, yeah. This will, interestingly enough, be the second time Ivy's kind of hit in a relationship situation. I mean, we don't all have to dive into our past with our present relationships, but it's always a thing when it comes up, especially considering they're tied to Lena, and then Lena was tied to this person. But it's like Harley had to find out. I think it was during the wasn't it during the Court of Owls situation in season 3 where she found out about when she found out about her and Catwoman. I believe that's when that came up. So, and they were obviously able to move past that, but this is going to be kind of a different situation. I don't know. I'm really, really interested to see where this storyline goes and the complications that come along with it, you know, and how, like, once again, we all kind of give. I mean, they're kind of in that very superhero range where it's like, yeah, a lot of superheroes end up creating their own villains, whether it's, you know, accidentally or whatever the case may be. You know, you end up making them. But yeah, really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.